We're going to talk about distributions. We're going to talk about add backs through the business, et cetera, to get us to finally where we're going to land today, which is seller's discretionary earnings, which is what does your business actually pay you as the owner? You want to start with that number so you know exactly is the juice worth.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
What's up, Remarkables? It's Dr. Stephen Franson here for another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. And this is part 2 in an awesome conversation that I'm having with my fractional CFO and you. So I'm happy to reintroduce Bob Siegel. I almost called you Dr. Bob Siegel. Bob, say hi to everybody.
Hi, yeah, feel free to call me doctor. That'd be a new one. That'd be a first.
He's the money doctor. He's the number doctor, right? So, and we love that as chiropractors because for the most of us, we got into this business to take great care of people, and about halfway through school, we figured out, holy crap, we actually have to be entrepreneurs and business owners, and we've got to figure out how to run a business too, right? So, in those first couple of years, when you're trying to get your head and your hands around being a chiropractor, being a doctor, starting to put together teams and building a business, marketing, and the numbers, man, very often fall to the wayside. But as we mature as business people, what we recognize is to really make the most impact, to really have a remarkable practice, we have to have a data-driven business, right? So in order to be a really profitable business that makes the biggest impact possible, we've got to be 1 part gut, 2 parts data, right? And that was a learning experience for me, and I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, because we've got good instincts, we've got a good gut, right? So, and when you're functioning purely as an owner operator, you can get away with that for a while, right? But eventually, as you start to grow and build a team around you, start adding associate doctors and really start going into scale, especially if you're positioning yourself one day to make a graceful and profitable exit, you absolutely have to be 1 part gut, 2 parts data. So Bob, I'm so psyched to have the second half of this conversation around the strategic reports associated with your finances. So you and I have been, hard at work in the behind the scenes, building out our remarkable money program, which would be the perfect complement to the Vital Signs Performance Metrics program, right? So instead of looking at the performance metrics of the practice, like how many patients did you see, new ones, conversion rates, stick rates, collection visit average, patient visit average, case average, et cetera, we're now looking at the flip side of the story, which is the financial picture, right? So ultimately, that's what this conversation is about, is gaining financial fluency, right? Having a literacy so that when you're looking at the numbers, the metrics, if you will, become the matrix, right? They start telling you the story of the business. So if you did not hear the first part of this conversation, make sure you go back and listen to the last episode. And if you're a numbers guy like I am now, you can watch it on YouTube so that you can watch us walk through. We actually have Bob's prepared a PowerPoint to keep everybody's sanity so they can walk through these numbers and do it with the visual cues of a PowerPoint. So Bob, thanks so much, man. Let's jump back into it. What are we looking at here?
So in the last episode, I guess, we talked about the strategic income statement and the components that make up that strategic income statement, which is the top line revenue. We subtract from that the cost of services delivered to give us a gross profit, which is the profit we generate on the services we delivered. As we said, we want to make sure that in a chiropractic office, that's a kind of a 70 to 80% of our revenue goes to our gross profit. And then we talked about all the other costs associated with running the business, which is our operating expense, our OPEX. That we wanted to be 60 to 70% of revenue. And from that, we subtract the OPEX from our gross profit, and that gives us our income before we pay the tax man. Once we pay the tax man, we can then, we have what's available for distribution.
That's right. If I could recap just that on that last slide, I want to talk a little bit about direct and indirect costs. So for everybody who just needs the review as much as I do, the direct cost means what are the direct costs of delivering that $1 million worth of healthcare. So as we're using this example of a 7-figure business, this is $1 million practice, $1 million in top line revenue, or $1 million in collections. It costs us $250,000 to deliver those services. In other words, if you're the owner operator, it's you getting paid as a chiropractor. It's your associate doctor getting paid as a chiropractor. It's your tech CA who's involved in the delivery of the care, whether that's doing the exam, taking x-rays, et cetera, et cetera. There's transactions costs, like the credit card costs associated with that. And it's the consumables. If you're selling probiotics, you had to buy those probiotics to sell them at a profit, right? So all in all, it cost you $250K to make that $1 million, right? So that's where that 25% plays out. And then that's our gross profit. And from there, there's other indirect costs that are supportive costs. There's a lot of support going on around the actual delivery of the healthcare and the costs of goods sold and the costs of services delivered. And those are the operating expenses, or OpEx. That's where that 60 to 70% shows up, right? That's all the supportive staff, training, marketing, your insurance, your rent, et cetera, right? That's all OpEx, right? So, and that's a 60 to 70% of your top line revenue or collections. And that leaves in the end, the income, right? That's going to get taxed, right? So, and there's going to be 10 to 20% of the revenue, and it's landing us here. We got that $1 million, Bob, down to $130,000,
Yeah.
which, as you said, hey, that ain't bad. That's a 13% return in this example for that, for the monies, that business is going to be paying you. You're seeing that 13% return coming out the end after you've been paid your salary as the CEO, you've been paid your salary as the clinic director, you've been paid your salary as an adjusting doctor. And you're also, at this point, we're going to talk about distributions. We're going to talk about add backs through the business, et cetera, to get us to finally where we're going to land today, which is seller's discretionary earnings, which is what does your business actually pay you as the owner? You want to start with that number so you know exactly, is the juice worth the squeeze, the brain damage associated with owning a business? Exactly how much does this business pay me and my family for the privilege of owning a chiropractic business?
Yeah. And so just one other word on OpEx, we're going to now dive into the components of that to look at kind of where we see the chiropractic office, how much they should be spending on each piece of OpEx. But really the right word is investing, because a lot of the money you're spending there is helping you, it's leverage, it's helping you support or drive that top line revenue. So, I'm going to just jump right in and break it down into some of the components. So the very first component we're talking about is training and development. We're saying you should be investing 8 to 12% of revenue in training and development, because, and that is truly an investment, because, the more capable your people are, the more they're going to add to this business, whether it's driving revenue, becoming more efficient, introducing, new ideas to drive revenue or become more efficient. So, it's an investment, and it's an indirect cost. You have to, spend money on that. And one of the things I know I've gotten some reaction on training and development, 10%, that's a big number on $1 million business, $100,000. Right. But it's not all just direct costs. I'm spending $100,000 on coaching.
On coaching seminars, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's other aspects, though. It's the time people spend. So even if they're still in the office, but if you're investing, 2 hours in training somebody, and you have somebody training them in, so you have 2 people, what is the cost of that time? That's an investment, that you're already paying their salary. It's not additional money out the door, but it's time. And that's a big concept I think we'll get into as we go through all of these categories of the OpEx.
Yeah, Bob, let me speak into that a little bit. And we hear this, the marketing is the same thing, right? So when you're talking about training and developing of yourself and your team, your people, and marketing your business, right? So these are the things that we're choosing to invest to actually grow the business. This is what drives the business and grows the business. And people will have a hard time putting their head around, even how do I get to 10% of top line revenue goal in marketing, and they're used to spending, they're thinking about spending money in marketing and investing that money to grow, right? So at the end of the day, whatever, if we're talking about marketing, you have to pay for your marketing director, or you pay for your marketing manager, or you pay for contracted marketing experts, whether it's your website developer, your SEO guy, your Facebook, your ads guy, right? So somebody running your email marketing campaigns, right? So your gifting program, right? So any external marketing events that you do, dinner talks, and, all of, billboards and radio and television and print advertising. It's like, there's so much you do, but anybody that's involved in marketing as well, there's labor costs associated with that. So you go do spinal screenings or corporate wellness or dinner talks, you're paying somebody to be there, right? So there's labor associated with that in addition to the marketing director. So all of those things fall underneath your marketing budget. Same thing when it comes to training and developing. When training and development is like, you've got to be thinking about, like, yes, there's coaching fees. Yes, there's seminar fees, but there's also hotel fees, airline tickets, right? So dinners that you otherwise would not be spending that money if you weren't traveling, training your team, right? So the labor associated with when you're training in your practice, everybody knows in a Remarkable Practice, we train like lives depend on it. Right. So we say that we see patients between trainings, which implies that you are consistently and regularly blocking time to train your people. So let's say 2 hours a week. So if you have 5 people at $20 an hour, 2 hours a week, you're paying somebody to train them. You're paying these people to be there to be trained. This all adds up. What I'm trying to get everybody to recognize and wrap your head around is all of that is costing money. It's all built into your costs. So you want to be allocating 8 to 12% of your top line revenue and say, this is in investing in developing myself and my people, including your doctors, your office managers, CAs, et cetera. Bob, this is a critically important part of running a business from a strategic perspective. I know I want to grow, so I'm budgeting 8 to 12% of where I want to land top line revenue goal, right? So it's even more than that for both training and developing and marketing.
Yeah. And, we talked about, I like your line, everybody exits the business at some point, right? Death, taxes, and exit, I guess is how you said.
Death, taxes, and exiting. Still an eating count.
And, so when you're thinking about increasing the value of the business, training is huge because I think most chiropractic offices, the owner is deeply immersed in operations, either doing adjustments, operating as the CEO, operating in marketing, and nobody wants to buy the business and all of a sudden, hey, Dr. John, you don't come with this? I don't understand.
Nobody wants to buy your job, Bob.
Right. Who's doing your marketing? Who's doing it? And so, part of the training is you need to develop an infrastructure or a team that actually is doing that.
Sounds a lot like systems and team building and scalability and durability, Bob. I love it. You're speaking our love language.
Yeah, love language. I like that. So hugely important training. Stephen talked about marketing. Again, same level of investment, that 8 to 12%. And then, you have a whole back office staff to support this business. The front desk, you have an office manager, a clinic director, a lot of times, or a CEO, a lot of times it is you, the owner of the business, wearing some of this hats, but, you're paying yourself to a salary.
Let's talk about that, Bob, because what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to represent truth, like a true representation of your business. How profitable is your business? Now, imagine if Bob and I rocked into your practice and we tried to buy your business. That this is how we're going to audit your business, because I don't want to buy a job. I want to buy a business, and I'm going to look and I'll be like, okay, so who runs the place? Oh, I run the place. So you're the clinic director, you're the CEO, right? So there's a salary there, right? And then is there an office manager? Great. Well, it's my wife. Well, does she come with the deal? No, she doesn't come with the deal. It's like, okay, so I need an office manager, right? So there's 60 to 80 grand there in $1 million practice, right? Or if it's a COO, it might be more than that, 80 to 100 grand, right? So then you've got your front desk, let's call it 2 CAs, right? So this adds up quick, but I want to make sure docs, owners, you're hearing right now that salary that's allocated for clinic director, let's call it 100K, that's your salary. You're just accounting for it on your accountability chart, right? So you're saying, okay, so I'm accounting for the fact that I have this job, I own the business, there's an accountability chart for this business. All those positions on the accountability charts are jobs. So you own jobs inside of the business you own, right? So, and that job of clinic director pays you $100K, right? So that's an indirect cost for delivering this healthcare. So just you want to account for that. So that's your first $100K in your back pocket, right? So, and then when we talk about direct costs, those, direct costs are associated with delivering the healthcare, right? So that was captured in costs of services delivered. And we're going to get to that in a minute, Bob, but you might be the CEO and one of the adjusting doctors. Great. We're going to pay you as an adjusting doctor as well. So that's going to be another $100K, so to speak, in your back pocket.
Yeah. Do we want to jump to that right now? That might be a good.
Yeah, let's go there.
So, again, we're trying to make this as practical, I guess, as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the question is, how much should I be paying in salary, in payroll in this business? And we came up with a range of 40 to 60% that's broken down between the direct labor, the cost of providing the care, and indirect labor, which is supporting that. And basically 20 to 30% of revenue should be going towards your direct labor, 30% going towards indirect labor. And one person, I think the best example is the owner operator, who does adjusting. A part of their salary should be allocated towards direct. And then where are you spending the rest of your time? Well, it's an indirect labor. Is marketing, CEO, maybe you're doing the books. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, in this example for direct labor, it's $1 million practice. So typically $1 million practice has got 2 doctors, right? It's very commonly, it's an owner operator. Guys, that term means you're the owner and you're operating as a chiropractor, right? So the owner operator. So you've got an owner operator, DC, who's probably also the clinic director, right? And you've got an associate doctor. That's super common, right? So let's, just for sanity's sake, we're doing nice round numbers. Let's say you pay your associate doctor $100K at $1 million practice. You should definitely be in the 6 figures. You'd probably be higher than that. And then you're going to pay yourself as if you were paying an associate doctor to replace you. Call it another $100K, right? So now we have $100K for you as an adjusting doctor, $100K for your associate doctor, and then another $30K for the tech CA that's supporting you. So the direct cost there, when it comes to payroll cost, is $230K, right? And then as you see down below, the clinic director rolls $100K. So now you're $100 for an adjusting doctor, for you as an adjusting doctor, $100 for you as the clinic director. So now you're at $200K, right? As the owner operator who plays the role of CEO, clinic director, and adjusting doctor, right? Then you get your office manager, 60 to 80,000, front desk, $30,000 a piece, and we're at another 240. So you guys can see how we're breaking down that $1 million. Like, how does it distribute? And the ranges that Bob has set here on the side is for your heuristic, a construct for you to operate under, to just to give it the sniff test, saying, am I within the parameters of what they're designing here? Direct labor cost, 20 to 30% of revenue. Indirect is 20 to 30%, which brings us a total payroll cost of 40 to 60% of revenue, of top line revenue or collections.
Right. And I would say that is the one number everybody is really attuned to, is whether you pay a weekly or a biweekly payroll. How much is my payroll? Because that's, I got to cover payroll this week. I got to cover, knowing kind of, hey, I'm $1 million business. I'm paying a weekly payroll. I need $9,000-$10,000 put aside for payroll every week. Is it's I'm not going to call it a key metric, but it's certainly a number everybody's always tuned to, because
Absolutely,
you always got to cover your payroll. So
absolutely.
So I thought that was I'm glad we jumped to that as we were talking about
and we captured some of those other related expenses there as well. The office of facility is 8 to 12% of revenue.
Yep.
So that's your rent, your utilities, maintenance cost, office costs, like software supplies, et cetera. So that's 8 to 12% of top line revenue. All of these are against top line revenue, guys. So we just wanted to keep the math simple for you. So other is 3 to 5% of revenue. And that's going to be a catch-all for things like insurance and dues and legal, interest, postage, license. So we've accounted for all of these elements and given you these ranges to make sure that, again, you've got constructs to operate under when it comes to your own budgeting.
Yeah. And in what I've seen looking at, kind of the whole soup to nuts of different size
The
practices.
gamut.
You know,
Yeah. From small,
the
medium
gamut.
to large. Yeah.
Yeah, typically I see the facilities, office facilities percentage is higher in the smaller practice. They have all this additional capacity that they haven't kind of realized yet. But one of the dynamics I thought was interesting, I think we talked about it the other day, is, marketing. I've seen the smaller practices, are spending a higher percentage on marketing. And, I think that's a little bit has to do with, maybe some leverage points you get as you grow and whatnot, or maybe the larger
These are
practices need to invest more.
These are three critically important points that you just made. So let's not glaze over them, right? So the idea of like economies of scale, like, as if you look at a quote unquote small practice, meaning you're in 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, small meaning you're at 100 visits a week, let's call it, versus that same exact building, right? Let's just call it 1,500 square feet, and that person seeing 600 patients a week. Guess what? You both have one rent. You both have one sign. You both have one X-ray unit. You both have one fill in the blank, right? So the essentially the electrical bill's the same, the plumbing bill's the same. It's just like, you got to recognize that, as you grow the business, the economies of scale kick in and the profitability. So it's now relative to the cost of, the cost of your facility relative to your top line revenue. It becomes more expensive as you get, as you're smaller. It gets less expensive as you get bigger. And then you've made up that point around, in other words, it's more profitable, right? So that seems like, no kidding, but you have to say it, right? So as at the end of the day, we have this incredibly chiropractic is a potentially incredibly profitable business, isn't it, Bob? Right.
Oh,
so
100%.
it's potentially an incredibly profitable business. It's so sexy. God is good, right? So he knows we're taking good care of his people. He takes good care of us. If you optimize your business, it's incredibly profitable, right? So for those bigger businesses, as you said, meaning they've got a larger TAP or total active patients, a lot of larger patient base, they see more referrals, right? There's more opportunities for them to do external activities because people invite them to come and speak or be at their business or their gym or whatever, versus the smaller business who find themselves grinding, trying to get that inertia, overcome the inertia of not having those bodies in play. So relative to the larger practices, they're spending more relative to the larger practices, which just tells me to put my foot in the ass of those bigger practices and say, hey, you got lots of margin there. Let's invest and let's serve our purpose and reach more people.
Yeah, 100%. So let's just move to kind of the last concept that we teased at the beginning about the idea of what is the owner's comp? What's that? The seller's discretionary earnings. I love that term. And so we've gone through the financials, and during the conversation, we talked about all these different elements. We talked about the salary that the chiropractor is taking out of the business for their role as, whether it's as an adjusting doc, whether it's a CEO, marketing, whatever, visionary, whatever role they're playing. And we talked about in this $1 million business, that would be, about $200,000.
Yeah, about 100 for the CEO / clinic director, and about 100,000 as a adjusting chiropractor, right?
Yeah. And then you, as the owner, get distributions. You get a return on your investment in this business. You took on the risk, you get the rewards, and you end up with a distribution. So we said, pre-tax profit of $130,000, I think was the number. So now you're up to $330,000 in total income.
Earnings. Yep.
Total earnings. Sorry. And then the last piece is, hey, let's take advantage of the fact that, I am running a business and I can take care of some of my personal business, within the business. So, I think,
you're paying health insurance, you pay your car, you pay your cell phone, right? That ream of paper that you need for the home office, right? So, and we're not talking about monkey business, guys. We're talking about the reality is there are add backs, like you run costs through the business, right? So you're right, Bob. It's these three things that add together that get us what's called seller's discretionary earnings, right? So it's also, you'll hear owner's discretionary earnings, ODE, right? So it becomes seller's discretionary earnings and becomes very real when you go to exit the business, right? Because that's the number that they're going to multiply some sales multiple times SDE, or seller's discretionary earnings, which ultimately says this is the asset value of this business, right? So some multiple times SDE. SDE is really, how much does this business pay me? How much does this cash flow to me as the owner of the business? Once again, just to recap, Bob, you're getting salaries for the jobs that you do in the business. In this example, it was, I'm the clinic director, I get paid 100 grand. I'm an adjusting doctor, I get paid another 100 grand. That's 200 grand. I get distributions of profit based on my equity, and I own 100% as the owner, let's say in this example, right? So I get distributions of profit plus whatever add backs I'm running through the business. All those three add together, and that is the juice that comes out of this squeeze, right? So at the end of the day, hey, we're all business owners. We all understand there's a big squeeze here, right? So, and what you'll hopefully see if you run these numbers properly and you optimize your business, that the juice is definitely worth the squeeze. Bob, I appreciate you so much for helping us put this together. I so look forward to the release of the Remarkable Money program. That's coming down the pike, because we know so many of our chiropractors are, they came out of the gates, brilliant clinicians, hopeless business people. We've been on this journey together to become remarkable CEOs so we can run remarkable businesses, which are data-driven businesses. And we so appreciate you, man. Thanks for all your help.
A pleasure to participate. Thanks for inviting me.
Bob Siegel, my fractional CFO. Thanks, everybody. God bless.
All right, remarkable CEOs. So as promised, I am here today in the studio with one of the greats in our chiropractic profession. I can say this because I have been following Bill, you and your work since before I even was a chiropractor. When I was working as a chiropractic assistant in a chiropractic office, before I even went to chiropractic school, I learned about you and the work that you were doing. And you have had a huge impact on my life in 2 decades that I've been in this profession. You have been here longer. You've been serving this great profession. So I can't tell you how honored I am to be able to interview you today and just pick your brain. I know you're a CEO. I know you're a leader, an innovator. You are a thought leader, and you are helping advance the chiropractic profession. You've done that for a long time. So truly honored to have you join me here today on our Remarkable CEO podcast. So Bill, welcome to the show. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with me here today.
Thank you. It's going to be a delight. I can hardly wait to see what unfolds.
Well, I'd love for you to unpack a little bit about your story. So, I would assume everybody knows you, but what assuming does. So I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about who you are, your genesis story, how you got into chiropractic, and really how then you've got into doing some of the work you're doing now. And then we'll probably press fast forward and we'll go into specifically what's happening now and where we're going next, and how specifically you're helping our profession advance in this next season of our great profession. So I'll throw it over to you, Doc, or Doc. I keep thinking you're Doc, but Bill, take it away.
Sure. Well, my background is in media. Before I discovered chiropractic, I was working as a creative director for advertising agencies in San Francisco and Seattle and Denver and wherever. And that's kind of the background that I had. And I was working after my ad agency days at a film production company here in Colorado Springs. And, we did sales films and documentaries. Our biggest client back in the early 80s was the Saudi Arabian Navy of all things. And we'd fly over there to do documentary films, documenting the creation of the Saudi Arabian Navy. I mean, that was our gig. And about that time, 2 chiropractors moved in next door to our offices, our production offices there on the 2nd floor of the Plaza building. And they were chiropractors. And, we'd heard stories about chiropractors. And so we ignored them until one day we noticed they were carrying videotapes in the hallway under their arms. And hey, we do video. What are you doing with video? And come to find out, they were getting ready to harness this newfangled invention called the VCR and harness it for use in a chiropractic office for patient education. And would we like to help them create these videos? And we were somewhat wary. But they said, if you guys want to play, someone from your team needs to attend one of our Renaissance seminars. And so I got the short straw and flew to Spokane, Washington. And we were in the Davenport Hotel in downtown Spokane. And I attended a 3-day seminar taught by Guy Riekman and Joseph Felicia that changed my life. Those 3 days, kind of modeled after Est, affirmed a lot of what I believed about the experience I had in my own body. Chiropractic made sense to me. I went back to Colorado Springs, said, hey, I think we need to help these guys create their videos. 9 months later, Peter Graves showed up. I did some follow-up consulting with Renaissance till about 1990, then hooked up with 2 chiropractors to form Back Talk Systems, sold that 10 years later, and started Patient Media. And that's what I've been doing in the printed area. But in the early 2000s, I knew that we were going to have to go digital. That's the story I like to tell is about Willie Sutton, for whom the term Slick Willie was coined. He was a bank robber in about the 1920s. And what made him so special was that he was a really well-dressed bank robber. And he eluded capture for many years. He was finally caught and he was asked, so why are you robbing banks? And he said, that's where the money is. And the internet is where new patients are these days, because whatever you're going to buy, you're going to go visit a website or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 before you actually make a buying decision. So hooked up with a incredible business partner in Perth, Australia in 2005. And we formed Perfect Patients. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, I love it. And you're a blast from the past. I mean, so many just awesome names that you threw out there. And Back Talk Systems was actually the first thing that I encountered. And then the Perfect Patients or Patient Media was next for me that I encountered, the written materials. I still remember all of those things. And then now Perfect Patients. So what an incredible story. I have so many things I'd love to ask you about the past, but let's talk a little about the present. You brought up a really good point, talking about Slick Willie, and you talked really about, where things are at. And you saw, let's call it 20 years ago, this is where things are going. We're going into the digital age. We're moving into the digital space. We need to have the written, media that still has relevance, but we have to be able to meet people where they're at. Can you talk a little bit about specifically right now, here we are, it's 2022 and we're recording this podcast. It's the 4th quarter. We're coming to the end of 2022. We're moving into 2023. I don't know when you're going to listen to this podcast, whoever's listening right now, but we have clearly become, we are in the technology day and age. So you saw that 20 years ago. So I'd love to have you unpack for us specifically how you're helping doctors today, like right now in 2022. How are you helping doctors solve some problems? Like what problems would you say right now, if you look at our profession, do we have, and specifically what you are able to do to help solve that problem through the business or businesses that you have supporting chiropractic?
Well, that's a 2-hour mini seminar, which we won't be giving today, but just to focus it in on the digital side of things. I think probably there's a lot of problems we solve, but the first is a practitioner today must have a website. And believe it or not, there are still chiropractors who think they're going to be able to slip into retirement without having to learn email or get a website or, any of these other things, which are quite learnable skills, but gosh, it's too much work. I don't want to do it. And we end up projecting our use of the internet onto prospective patients. And that's a huge mistake, common error that many practitioners use. Because I wouldn't use the website to find a doctor. Well, of course not. But, your patients do. And so there's the first right answer is you need a website. The second right answer is you need a high converting website. And it's a distinction that we uncovered through a huge mistake we made, which I'm happy to share with you. But we discovered that it's not just having a website, it's about how do you inspire a visitor to complete the switch of actually becoming a patient. How do you turn a visitor into a reception room new patient? That's probably the real nitty gritty of the problem that we like to solve. And every practitioner, every practice has a slightly different problem with when it comes to that. And at one end of the spectrum, you've got the chiropractor who has vowed to show up beige. That is, I'm not going to have any sharp corners, sharp edges. I want to be el blando because I don't want to offend anyone, because they think that's how you attract more people. And of course, the only way you attract, as you would certainly know, would be you have to polarize. You have to polarize, and you can't polarize if you're beige. So I think one of the key problems that we solve is that we are pretty darn good at being able to capture the spirit, the soul, the gut of a practitioner and turn that into a marketing tool that a patient says, that's the chiropractor I want to go to. And that's called conversion. Okay. Because you can have a website, you can have it optimized for your name. And so when someone's looking for you, you can be found, but there's far, far more to it, because oftentimes, if you're on certain searches, you're going to click on the top return.
Right.
You want to know the distance between Denver and Dayton, click on the top answer. If you're looking for someone who's going to touch you, look at the first return, the second return, the third. I mean, it's a personal relationship. So I think that it's really crucial that you entrust your online reputation, because you have two of them. You have your reputation with your patients, and you've got a reputation with Google.
Yeah. And
it's really important that the reputation with Google properly depicts the types of patients you love seeing, and to connect with authenticity, with transparency, so that people feel like this is my chiropractor right here.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you hit on so many things there. You actually answered multiple questions that I had, and so you're hitting the nail on the head.
We're through.
We're almost through. I'm going to ask for a couple more minutes, but I think our listeners are thoroughly enjoying listening to you, because you're nailing it. So, in the remarkable practice, and we teach the domains are attraction. So you bring a seeker. There's a seeker who's searching, and they find you, right? So then they come in as a seeker, but our first job is to turn them into a believer. And you talked about a website that represents the doctor well, authentically, genuinely, that converts. In other words, they take the next step. They didn't just come on, check you out. They actually took the next step. Like you said, I liked how you said a waiting room, new patient, or reception room, new patient specifically. That is so important, because, a lot of times we have what I call vanity stats, right? So these vanity metrics that it's like, okay, but what's really going on in your practice? Like, tell me about, I have some deeper questions, So I love that you went there, because I think we can almost become infatuated with ourselves or with this appearance, but I'm like, but does the appearance convert? Is it actually producing the outcome that you have a website to do? Like, the reason why you have a website is for one purpose, in my opinion, as you said, it's to get people to discover you and take the next step, which means coming into your office. So I love that you went there right away, because that was the second question, which, how do you help our doctors help more people? That's how you help more people, is they actually come see you. They come into your office, which is massive. So this is a big, and it's a problem that absolutely must be solved. And to stay relevant in this day and age, you nailed it. Listen, you have to stand out. You have to set yourself apart. People have to recognize or notice you. We call it like disruptive or whatever, but you've got to be able to do that. So can you talk a little bit about just kind of going deeper into this concept with the CEOs? We talk about leverage a lot in our program, in our Remarkable CEO program. We talk about using leverage. We say three things you leverage. You leverage people, you leverage technology, and systems. And so those three things, we always home in on that with our Remarkable CEOs in our program as they're scaling their businesses and they're helping reach more people, but not all dependent upon them. So can you talk about leveraging what you're doing specifically and how the return on the investment is also, going to be influenced there with the limited resources of, time, energy, focus, and money. Like, how do we use leveraging technology, leveraging the people, and leveraging the systems that you guys have? Can you share with us how that, doctors do that?
Gosh, well, I think the systems and technology are the most likely candidates for how a website can plug into a practice. And it really starts with something very, very difficult to do, which is to see it from the patient's point of view. And all too often, chiropractors will, and not just chiropractors, but many people who do websites will, they use it as a form of actualization and to, use their artistic efforts to create a website that they would love. And of course, the website isn't for you. Gosh, we had this, I remember this one practitioner, we were going back and forth about the right shade of blue. I mean, give me a break. It's the blue, that's not the problem. You need to form an emotional connection with your visitor, and the blue has little to nothing to do with it. So he was trying to actualize, and it didn't end well. But I think it has to do with how technology can do a lot to short circuit how much energy. There was a chiropractor client of ours, it was a long time ago, but he said, the patients who show up after visiting my website say they show up more like a referral patient shows up than a stranger. And I thought that was really fascinating because, when there's a referral patient, someone else is vouching for you, and there's kind of it's a fast track. It saves time when it comes to bringing a new patient on board. So I think that's one thing that a well done website can do. The other thing too, I think, is that, and I don't think chiropractors utilize this as much as they could, but gosh, if I were in practice, I would want, I would record all of the questions I was ever asked. I would ask my team, record every question that a patient asks. And some of those questions need to be turned into a major blog post, so you don't have to keep doing the same repetitious explanation over and over again. You reach in for your, why heat or ice, hot or cold, and you give them this card, and they go on and they read the whole thing, and they've got the directions, and it's done once, and then you don't have to do it again. So I think systematization, crucial. I think leveraging technology, really important in terms of attracting a quality new patient, someone who wants to be part of your tribe. Yeah,
it's good. And I know we didn't get into this, but content, you're alluding to content right now as well. And I know that's a big part of, what your organization is about, is content that's, relevant and will help, like you said, answer a lot of the questions people have, which actually builds your authority, your trustworthiness, the attractive factor, all of those things. So I know there's a lot more we could dig into, but we do need to wrap this. But I do want you to be able to share with our audience how to get in contact with you. So, Bill and his company, Perfect Patients, they are a success partner. What does that mean? That means that they specifically are aligned with the Remarkable Practice because we share values, we share a common mission, and we are on a mission together, and we believe that we are better together. So that's why we work with Perfect Patients. So I'm confident in referring to you. So we would love for our docs to be able to reach out to you, connect with you, or someone from your team. What's the best way for them to do that, Bill?
A couple of ways, of course, and let's use the internet. Obviously, the Perfect Patients website is a place to kind of check us out and see what our vibe is all about. And then certainly you can email me directly. It's a pretty complicated email address. It's bill@perfectpatients.com. So try to be incredibly accessible, and would love to continue this conversation wherever it goes. And the folks that support me so well at Perfect Patients have developed a a place for your folks to show up called perfectpatients.com/remarkable. And that's where they can, one of the things anyone listening to this should go there and ask for a website audit. I mean, you're going to have someone who's looked at not hundreds, but thousands of chiropractic websites, and they'll walk through, no obligation, no high pressure, and say, here's something that you might want to consider. You might want to upgrade this. You might want to change this. You might want to get away from stock photos, blah, 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 blah. And they're all practical action steps. And it's just a way of providing and giving back to the profession. So you can arrange that at perfectpatients.com/remarkable. So that's probably the easy way.
It's great. One of the things we always love to do at the end of every one of our meetings is take one goal and set one goal and take one action step. I think that's a great goal and action step for everybody listening here. So please follow Bill's advice and take him up on his offer and do that. I highly encourage all of you to do that. Even if you just recently built a website 3 months ago, it's no matter where you're at in the journey, that's an absolute step to do. So, and that's one of the remarkable attributes of remarkable CEO. We call it the assess. You always are assessing so that you can plan, prepare, and execute even better. So it's really important to do those audits of your business, including your website. So Bill, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being a remarkable success partner. Thank you for joining me today on this podcast. For all of you who are listening, I love and appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of this program. And remember to tune in next week for the next episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Until then, God bless you all and have a wonderful week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.